The stars were cold that night, when the last ship left the dying world of the plague dragons. Taeho remembered the fire. He remembered his mother pushing him into the escape pod. He remembered her golden eyes, looking at him one final time before the door closed between them. He was only 3 cycles old then, now he was 5. And those eyes still haunted his dreams. Station Orvac floated in the empty space between 2 galaxies. It was not a place for living. It was a place for forgetting. The Galactic Council had built it far from everything, far from trade routes, far from colonies, far from anyone who might accidentally come too close to the children inside. There were 47 of them now. 47 plague dragon orphans. The oldest was 8 cycles. The youngest had been born on the station itself, never knowing what grass felt like under her small, clawed feet. Her name was Nari, and she followed Taeho everywhere like a shadow. The station had everything a child might need. There were beds and blankets. There was food that came through sealed tubes. There were toys that had been cleaned with chemicals so strong that they smelled like nothing at all. There were screens that showed pictures of other worlds, other children playing in sunlight. But there was no touch. There was never any touch. The workers who maintained the station wore full protective suits. Their faces were hidden behind dark visors. Their hands were covered in 3 layers of gloves. When they brought food or cleaned the rooms, they moved quickly and never spoke. If a child reached for them, they stepped back. If a child cried, they left faster. Taeho had stopped reaching long ago. The plague dragons were not evil. They had never wanted to hurt anyone. Their bodies simply carried something that other species could not survive. Tiny spores lived in their scales, in their breath, in every part of them. To another plague dragon, these spores were harmless. To everyone else in the galaxy, they meant death within days. For thousands of years, the plague dragons had lived alone on their world. They knew they were dangerous. They stayed away from others. They built their own cities, created their own art, sang their own songs under purple skies. They were a proud and gentle people who wanted nothing more than to exist in peace. Then the asteroid came. It struck without warning. The planet began to die. The plague dragons sent messages to the Galactic Council, begging for help. They asked for ships, for new worlds, for anything. The council debated for weeks. By the time they decided to help, it was too late for most. Only the children survived. Only the smallest ones who could fit in the emergency pods. The adults had given their seats to them, had pushed them through doors, had watched the pods fly away while the ground cracked beneath their feet. Taeho was one of those children. He carried his mother's last words in his heart like a stone. Live, my little one. Live and remember that you are loved. But how could he feel loved when no one would touch him? The station was quiet most of the time. The children had learned that crying did not bring comfort. Screaming did not bring anyone running to hold them. They learned to comfort each other instead. The older ones held the younger ones. They pressed their small bodies together at night, seeking warmth that the station's perfect temperature control could never provide. Taeho was one of the oldest. He took care of the little ones. He made sure Nari ate her food. He told stories to help them sleep. He tried to be strong because someone had to be, but at night, when everyone was asleep, Taeho would lie awake and wonder why the universe hated them so much. What had they done wrong? Why were they being punished? He was only 5 cycles old, but he already felt ancient. The station had windows. Through them, Taeho could see the stars. Somewhere out there, millions of beings lived their lives without fear. Children played with their parents. Families ate together, laughed together, held each other. Taeho had seen it on the screens. He knew what normal looked like. He would never have it. One day, a new message came to the station. The children were not told about it. But Taeho was good at listening. He heard the workers talking through the walls. A human doctor, one said. They are sending a human doctor to study them. Another one who will stare at them through glass. The other replied. Another one who will write reports about the poor little monsters. Humans are strange. This one actually asked to come here. She will leave within a week. They always do. Taeho did not know much about humans. He had seen pictures of them on the screens. They looked soft and fragile. They had no scales, no claws, no wings. They seemed weak compared to most species in the galaxy. He did not expect anything from this human doctor. He had stopped expecting things long ago, but somewhere deep in his chest, in the place where hope used to live, something small flickered. Maybe this one would be different. Maybe this one would at least look at them without fear in her eyes. Nari found him by the window that evening. She was only 2 cycles old, barely able to speak in full sentences. She pressed her small body against his and looked up at him with eyes that were too sad for such a young face. "Teho," she whispered. "Someone coming?" He looked down at her and tried to smile. "Yes, little one. Someone is coming. They stay?" Teho did not answer. He just held her closer and watched the stars. In 2 days, the human would arrive. In 2 days, everything would either stay the same or change forever. He did not dare to hope for change. But his heart, young and wounded as it was, hoped anyway. The stars continued to shine, cold and distant. The station continued to float in the endless dark, and 47 orphans continued to wait for something they had never known. A gentle touch from someone who was not afraid. The ship was small and white. It came out of the darkness like a single star falling toward the station. Teho watched it from the window, his golden eyes following its slow approach. Behind him, the other children whispered and pointed. "Is that the human?" asked Nari, pressing her face against the glass. "Yes," Teho said. "That is her ship." The docking process took an hour. The children were not allowed near the docking area. They had to stay in their living quarters, behind the thick glass walls that separated them from the rest of the station. But they could see through the glass. They could watch. When the human finally appeared, Teho felt his breath catch in his chest. She was smaller than he expected. Her skin was pale brown, and her hair was black and long, tied behind her head. She wore simple clothes, not the heavy protective suit the workers wore, just a white coat over simple blue fabric. She carried a bag over her shoulder and a small device in her hand. The station commander met her at the entrance. His name was Do-hun, and he was a tall creature with gray skin and 4 arms. Teho had never liked him. Do-hun looked at the children like they were problems to be managed, not beings to be cared for. "Dr. Yuna," Do-hun said, his voice flat. "Welcome to Station Orvac. I hope your journey was acceptable." The human woman smiled. It was a strange expression to see. No one on the station ever smiled. "The journey was fine," she said. Her voice was warm and soft. "Thank you for having me, Commander. I have been looking forward to this for months." "Looking forward to it?" Do-hun sounded confused. "Most researchers request to leave within days. The conditions here are difficult." "I am not most researchers," Yuna replied. "Where are the children?" Do-hun led her through the station. Teho and the others watched through the glass as they walked past. When Yuna reached the observation area, she stopped. Her eyes found the children on the other side of the thick barrier. For a long moment, she just stood there and looked at them. Teho looked back. He studied her face, searching for the usual expressions he saw on visitors. Fear, disgust, pity. But he could not find them. Instead, he saw something he did not recognize, something that made his chest feel tight. Yuna walked closer to the glass. She did not step back when Nari pressed her small hands against the barrier. She did not flinch when the older children gathered around, their scales catching the light. She just looked at them, and then she smiled again. "Hello," she said softly. Her voice came through the speakers in the ceiling. "My name is Yuna. I am a doctor. I am here to learn about you." None of the children answered. They were not used to being spoken to directly. The workers never talked to them. Visitors usually only talked to each other about them, as if they were objects rather than children. Yuna did not seem bothered by the silence. She knelt down so that her eyes were level with Nari's. "You are very small," she said gently. "How old are you?" Nari looked at Teho for guidance. He nodded slowly. 2. Nari whispered. 2 cycles. 2 cycles. Yuna repeated. That is very young. Do you have a name? Nari. Nari. That is a beautiful name. Yuna's eyes moved to Taeho. And you? What is your name? Taeho felt strange. His scales felt warm. His heart was beating fast. Taeho, he said. His voice came out rough because he had not spoken to an outsider in so long. Taeho, Yuna said. You look like a leader. Do you take care of the little ones? He did not know how to answer. No one had ever noticed that before. No one had ever cared enough to ask. Yes, he finally said. I take care of them. Yuna nodded. Her eyes were wet, but she was still smiling. That is very brave of you. You are doing a good job. Taeho felt something crack inside his chest. A wall he had built around his heart shifted. He did not know what to do with the feeling. So he just stood there, staring at this strange human woman. Over the next few days, Yuna came to the observation area every morning and every evening. She sat by the glass and talked to the children. She asked them questions about their days, their favorite foods, their dreams. She listened when they answered. She remembered their names. She never wore a protective suit. The workers told her she should, but she refused. The glass is enough protection, she said. I do not want them to see another faceless person. I want them to see me. Taeho watched her carefully. He was waiting for her to show her true face. He was waiting for her to get bored, to become afraid, to leave like everyone else. But days passed, and she stayed. She smiled at them every morning. She said goodnight to them every evening. One night, Nari fell sick. It was not serious, just a small fever that young plague dragons sometimes got. But she was crying, and none of the other children could calm her down. The workers would not enter to help. They never did. Taeho held Nari in his arms and tried to soothe her. But she kept crying, calling out for someone, anyone, to make the pain stop. Then the speaker crackled. Taeho. It was Yuna's voice. I can see you. I am in the observation room. He looked up. Through the glass, he could see her standing there in the dim light. She must have come running when she heard the crying. She has a fever, Taeho said. It is not dangerous, but she is scared. Can you put her near the glass? Yuna asked. Taeho hesitated, but something in Yuna's voice made him trust her. He carried Nari to the glass wall and sat down with her in his lap. Yuna sat down on the other side, directly across from them. She pressed her hand flat against the glass. Nari, she said softly. Look at me. See my hand? I am right here. I am not going anywhere. I am not going anywhere. I am not going anywhere. Nari looked up, tears streaming down her small face. She saw Yuna's hand on the glass. Can you put your hand on mine? Yuna asked. Slowly, Nari reached out. Her tiny clawed hand pressed against the glass, right where Yuna's hand was. They could not feel each other. The barrier was thick and cold. But for a moment, it almost looked like they were touching. There, Yuna whispered. I am with you. You are not alone. Nari's crying slowly stopped. She stared at Yuna's face through the glass, her golden eyes wide with something Taeho had never seen in them before. Hope. When Nari finally fell asleep, Taeho looked at Yuna. His throat was tight. His eyes burned. Why? He asked. His voice was barely a whisper. Why do you care? Yuna was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. Because someone should, she said. Because you deserve it. Because I see children who have done nothing wrong, and I cannot just watch from far away. Taeho did not know what to say. He had never met anyone like her. He had never known that people like her existed. That night, as Nari slept peacefully in his arms, Taeho made a decision. He would let himself hope. Just a little. Just this once. Maybe this human was different. Maybe she would stay. Maybe, for the first time since he lost his mother, someone actually cared. Yuna had not slept properly in weeks. Her small room on Station Orvac was filled with data screens and research notes. Empty cups of cold tea sat on every surface. Her eyes were tired. But her mind was racing. She had found something. Something that could change everything. It had started as a simple question. Why were humans never sent to work on Station Orvac? The Galactic Council had representatives from dozens of species. But human workers were never assigned here. Yuna had assumed it was because humans were a younger species, still new to the galactic community. But that explanation never felt right. So she had started testing. The spores that the plague dragons carried were deadly to most species. When they entered the body of a non-plague dragon, they multiplied rapidly, attacking every system until the host died. The process was fast and painful. There was no cure. This was why the children were kept behind glass. This was why no one touched them. But human biology was strange. Humans had evolved on a harsh planet, surrounded by diseases and parasites and predators. Their immune systems were aggressive. Sometimes too aggressive. Human bodies attacked everything foreign. Sometimes even their own cells. Yuna had run the tests 100 times. Each time, the result was the same. The spores could not survive in human tissue. Human immune cells destroyed them within minutes. Not hours. Not days. Minutes. Humans were immune. Yuna sat in front of her screens, staring at the data. Her hands were shaking. This meant that she could enter the quarantine zone. She could touch the children. She could hold them. She could give them what they had been denied for years. But first, she needed permission. Commander Dohun's office was on the upper level of the station. Yuna walked there with her research data saved on a small chip. Her heart was pounding. She knew Dohun would resist. He was a careful man who followed rules without question. But she had to try. The door slid open when she approached. Dohun looked up from his work. His forearms paused over various screens and documents. "Dr. Yuna," he said. "Is there something you need?" "I need to speak with you," Yuna said. "About the children." Dohun's expression did not change. "What about them?" Yuna placed the data chip on his desk. "I have made a discovery. Human biology is immune to the plague dragon spores. I have run the tests over 100 times. The results are clear." Dohun looked at the chip but did not pick it up. "I see. And why are you telling me this?" "Because I want to enter the quarantine zone." The silence that followed was heavy. Dohun stared at her for a long moment. Then he stood up, his tall body seeming to fill the room. "Absolutely not. Commander. Dr. Yuna, I do not care what your data says. The protocols are clear. No one enters the quarantine zone without full protective equipment. No exceptions. The protective equipment frightens them," Yuna said. "They see faceless figures who refuse to touch them. They think they are monsters. They think everyone is afraid of them." "Everyone is afraid of them," Dohun replied flatly. "They are walking biological weapons. If your data is wrong, my data is not wrong. If your data is wrong," Dohun continued, "and you die in there, the Galactic Council will have my head. And if somehow, impossibly, your presence causes harm to the children, I will never forgive myself." Yuna took a deep breath. She had expected this. She had prepared for it. "Commander, those children have not been touched by another being in over 2 years. Do you understand what that does to a child? To any child. They need physical contact. They need to know that they are not monsters. They need to know that someone in this universe is not afraid of them. They have each other. It is not enough." Yuna's voice cracked. "I watch them through the glass every day. I see how Teho holds the little ones at night. I see how Nari cries in her sleep. They are starving, Commander. Not for food, you feed them well enough. They are starving for love, for touch, for basic kindness." Dohun was silent, his 4 hands clenched and unclenched. "Even if what you say is true," he said slowly, "I cannot authorize this. The risk is too great." Yuna nodded. She had known this would be his answer. She had already made her decision. "Then I will go in without authorization." Dohun's eyes widened. "You would throw away your career, your life, for this?" "Yes. The council will remove you from the station. They might prosecute you." "I know. You are insane." But there was something in Do-hun's voice, something that sounded almost like respect. Or maybe sadness. Yuna smiled tiredly. Maybe. But I became a doctor to help people. And those children need help that only I can give. I cannot stand by and do nothing. I will not. She turned and walked toward the door. Do-hun's voice stopped her. Dr. Yuna. She looked back. Do-hun was looking at his screens again, his face unreadable. The security systems in Sector 7 have been malfunctioning lately. I will need to run diagnostics for the next hour. I suggest you stay in your quarters during that time. Yuna understood. Her eyes filled with tears. Thank you, Commander. I am not doing anything, Do-hun said. I am simply maintaining the station's systems. Whatever happens elsewhere is not my responsibility. Yuna left his office. Her hands were still shaking, but now it was from excitement, not fear. In 1 hour, she would be able to enter the quarantine zone. In 1 hour, she would be able to touch those children. In 1 hour, everything would change. She returned to her room and prepared. She showered carefully, making sure she carried nothing that might harm the children. She put on simple, soft clothes, no buttons or hard edges that might hurt them. She practiced what she would say, how she would move, how she would show them that she was not afraid. The hour passed slowly. Yuna watched the clock, counting each minute. When the time finally came, she stood up and walked to the quarantine sector. The door was unlocked. Just as Do-hun had promised, Yuna stepped through. The corridor was empty. The cameras were dark. She walked forward, her footsteps echoing on the metal floor. The inner door was ahead. Beyond it were the children. Beyond it was Taeho, waiting with his sad golden eyes. Beyond it was Nari, who still pressed her hand against the glass every time she saw Yuna. Yuna placed her hand on the door panel. She took a deep breath, and she opened the door. The air that rushed out was warm and carried a faint, sweet smell. The spores. Yuna felt them enter her lungs. She felt her body react, her immune system activating, destroying them. Nothing happened. She was fine. She stepped into the room where the children lived. The lights were dim, it was almost their sleep time. But several of them were still awake. They saw her enter. They saw her enter without a suit. The screaming started immediately. Not screams of fear, but screams of warning. "Get out!" shouted one of the older children, a girl named Sora. "You will die! Get out!" The others joined in, crying and shouting and pushing each other away from Yuna. They thought she had made a mistake. They thought she would collapse any moment, choking on their poisonous spores. But Yuna did not collapse. She stood there, breathing normally, smiling gently. "I am fine," she said softly. "I promise, I am fine." The screaming slowly stopped. The children stared at her. They did not understand. Then Taeho pushed through the crowd. His golden eyes were wide. His small body was trembling. "How?" he whispered. "How are you alive?" Yuna knelt down so she was at his level. She looked into his eyes, those beautiful, wounded eyes that had seen too much pain. "Because humans are special," she said. "Your spores cannot hurt me. Nothing you are can hurt me." She reached out her hand. Taeho stared at it. His whole body shook. "You can touch me," Yuna said. "If you want to. I am not afraid." Taeho looked at her hand. He looked at her face. He looked at the other children watching in stunned silence. Then, slowly, like a wounded animal approaching kindness for the first time, he reached out and touched her fingers. Skin met scale. Warmth met warmth. And Taeho, the 5-year-old boy who had been strong for so long, finally broke. He collapsed into Yuna's arms, sobbing, clutching her like she might disappear at any moment. Yuna held him tight. Tears streamed down her own face. "I am here," she whispered. "I am here. And I am not going anywhere." Around them, the other children began to cry. One by one, they came closer. One by one, they reached out to touch this human who was not afraid of them. And for the first time in 2 years, The orphans of Station Orvac knew what it felt like to be held. The room was filled with small bodies. They pressed against Yuna from every side, their scales warm against her skin, their clawed hands gripping her clothes like she was the last solid thing in the universe. Yuna held as many of them as she could, her arms wrapped around Taeho and Nari, and a small boy named Junho, who had not spoken a word in months. Other children pressed their faces against her back, her shoulders, her legs. They were crying. All of them were crying. So was Yuna. She had prepared herself for this moment. She had imagined what it would be like. But nothing could have prepared her for the weight of their need. These children had been starving for years, and now they were finally being fed. "You are real," Taeho kept whispering into her shoulder. "You are real. You are real." "I am real," Yuna said, stroking his scaled head. "I am here. I am not a dream." Nari had climbed into her lap and refused to move. The tiny girl pressed her face against Yuna's chest, listening to her heartbeat. Her small body shook with sobs. "Warm," Nari whispered. "You are warm." "Yes, little one. I am warm, and so are you." The minutes passed. The crying slowly faded. The children did not let go, but their grip became less desperate. They began to relax into the touch they had been denied for so long. Taeho finally pulled back enough to look at Yuna's face. His golden eyes were red from crying, but there was something new in them, something bright and fragile. "Why?" he asked. His voice was hoarse. "Why are you not afraid of us?" "Everyone is afraid of us." Yuna smiled. She reached up and gently wiped the tears from his scaled cheeks. "I was never afraid of you," she said. "From the first moment I saw you through the glass, I was never afraid. I saw children who needed help. I saw children who deserved love. That is all I have ever seen. But we are dangerous. You are not dangerous to me." Yuna took his small clawed hand and pressed it against her cheek. "See? I am still here. Your touch does not hurt me. Nothing about you hurts me." Taeho stared at his hand against her face. He seemed unable to believe what he was feeling. "I thought no one would ever hold me again," he whispered. "After my mother. After the pods. I thought I would never feel this again." Yuna's heart broke. She pulled him close again, pressing her lips to his forehead in a gentle kiss. The room went silent. Every child stared at her. Even the ones who had been half asleep jerked awake. They looked at the place where Yuna's lips had touched Taeho's scales. They looked at her face. Taeho was frozen. His eyes were huge. His mouth was open. He could not finish the sentence. Yuna smiled at him, her eyes full of tears. "My mother used to kiss me like that when I was sad. It always made me feel better. I thought maybe it would help you too." Taeho touched his forehead where her lips had been. His claws traced the spot over and over, as if he was trying to make sure it was real. Then, without warning, he burst into tears again. But these were different tears. These were not tears of pain or fear or grief. These were tears of something else, entirely. No one has ever. He could not speak. He just cried. Nari tugged on Yuna's sleeve. The tiny girl was looking up at her with desperate eyes. "Me too?" she asked. "Kiss me too?" Yuna laughed through her tears. "Of course, little one." She leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss to Nari's small forehead. The girl made a sound, a small, happy sound that Yuna had never heard from her before. One by one, the other children came forward. They were shy and afraid, but they came. They asked for kisses. They asked for hugs. They asked for the simple touches they had been denied for so long. Yuna gave them everything she had. Hours passed. The children finally began to fall asleep, exhausted by emotion. They piled around Yuna like puppies, their warm bodies pressed together. Nari was curled in her lap. Taeho was leaning against her side, his hand still clutching her sleeve. Yuna looked down at them all. Her body was tired, but her heart was full. This was why she had become a doctor. This was why she had traveled across the galaxy, left behind everything she knew, fought against rules and protocols. For this moment, for these children. A sound at the door made her look up. Commander Do-hoon stood in the doorway. His forearms hung at his sides. His face was unreadable. Yuna tensed. She was ready to fight. Ready to argue. Ready to do whatever it took to stay with these children. But Do-hoon did not look angry. He looked broken. "I have served on this station for 3 years," he said quietly. 3 years of watching them through glass. 3 years of following protocols. 3 years of telling myself that the rules were there for their protection. 4. He took a step into the room. His eyes moved over the sleeping children, piled together with Yuna at their center. "I told myself I was keeping them safe," he continued. "But I was not. I was keeping them in prison. I was keeping them alone." "Commander, I have already contacted the Galactic Council," Do-hoon said. "I have sent them your research data. I have sent them images from the security cameras." He paused. "The ones I told you were not working." Yuna blinked. You were watching? I had to know if you would survive." Do-hoon's voice cracked. "I had to know if what you discovered was true. And when I saw you walk in, when I saw them touch you, when I saw you kiss that boy." He stopped and took a breath. "I knew I had to do something." "What did the council say?" Do-hoon allowed himself a small smile. "They were shocked. They demanded more tests, more data, more proof. But they cannot argue with what they saw. They are already discussing what this means." Yuna felt hope rising in her chest. "What does it mean?" "It means everything changes," Do-hoon said. "If humans are immune, then humans can care for these children. Humans can adopt them. Humans can give them homes." The words hit Yuna like a wave. Homes. These children could have homes. "There will be more tests," Do-hoon continued. "More protocols. The council will move slowly, as they always do. But the door is open now. Because of you. Because of one human doctor who refused to be afraid." Yuna looked down at Taeho. The boy was still asleep, his face peaceful for the first time since she had arrived. "I did not do anything special," she said softly. "I just did what anyone should have done." That is what makes it special," Do-hoon replied. "Anyone could have. No one did. Until you." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Dr. Yuna, when the council asks me what happened here tonight, I will tell them the truth. I will tell them that a human woman showed more courage and compassion than our entire galactic community combined. I will tell them that she proved we have all been cowards." He looked back at her one final time. "Thank you for showing me what bravery really looks like." Then he was gone. Yuna sat in the quiet room, surrounded by sleeping children. Her heart was full of hope and fear and love all mixed together. The future was uncertain. There would be challenges ahead. But for now, in this moment, she had given these children something they had almost forgotten existed. She had given them touch. She had given them kisses. She had given them proof that they were not monsters. And that was enough to change everything. 10 years had passed since the night Yuna first stepped into the quarantine zone. Taeho stood at the window of his home on Earth, watching the sun rise over the mountains. He was 15 cycles old now, tall and strong, his golden scales catching the morning light. He no longer looked like the broken child who had pressed his face against cold glass, hoping for a touch that never came. Behind him, he could hear Yuna in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. The smell of food filled the small house they shared. It was a simple home on the edge of a small town, surrounded by trees and gardens and neighbors who had learned to love their unusual family. "Taeho," Yuna's voice called. "Breakfast is ready. And do not forget you have a meeting at the embassy today." Taeho smiled. He turned away from the window and walked to the kitchen. Yuna was setting plates on the table. Her hair was longer now, streaked with gray. Lines had appeared around her eyes. But her smile was exactly the same as it had been 10 years ago. "I remember," Taeho said. "The ambassador from the council is coming to discuss the new adoption program." "The new adoption program that you designed," Yuna said, her voice filled with pride. My brilliant boy. Tejo felt his scales warm with embarrassment. I had help. You did the work. You wrote the proposal. You convinced the council. Yuna reached up and touched his face. Even after 10 years, those touches still meant everything to him. I am so proud of you. The news of human immunity had spread across the galaxy like fire. At first, there had been disbelief, then testing, then more testing. But the truth could not be denied. Humans could safely interact with plague dragons. Humans could hold them, care for them, raise them. The first adoptions had been difficult. Many humans were afraid. Many did not understand. But Yuna had led the way. She had adopted Tejo officially, becoming his mother-in-law. As well as in love, she had spoken at conferences, written articles, given interviews. She had shown the galaxy what was possible. Other humans followed. Slowly at first, then faster. Families opened their homes to the plague dragon orphans. Schools made space for them. Communities learned to welcome them. Not everyone accepted them. There were still those who feared them, who called them monsters, who protested against their presence. But there were more who saw them as children, more who saw them as people deserving of love. Nari was 12 now. She lived with a human family on a colony world, where she was the happiest child anyone had ever seen. She sent Tejo messages every week, filled with pictures of her new home, her new friends, her new life. The tiny girl who had once cried through every night, now laughed through every day. All 47 orphans from Station Orvac had found homes. Every single one, and they were not the only ones. Other plague dragons had survived the destruction of their world adults, who had been off-planet when the asteroid struck. Traders and travelers scattered across the galaxy. They had been in hiding, afraid to reveal themselves. Afraid of being hunted or imprisoned. When they heard what the humans had done, they came out of hiding. They reached out. They found a place in a galaxy that had once rejected them. Tejo had become a bridge between the two species. He worked with the Galactic Council, helping to create policies that protected plague dragon rights. He traveled to schools and communities, telling his story, showing others that fear could be overcome. He was, as many called him, an ambassador of peace. But to Yuna, he was simply her son. "Eat your breakfast," Yuna said, pushing a plate toward him. "You cannot change the galaxy on an empty stomach." Tejo laughed and sat down at the table. He picked up his eating utensils, special ones designed for his clawed hands, a gift from his human grandmother, Yuna's mother, who had welcomed him into the family with tears and hugs. "Remember when I was afraid to eat in front of you?" Tejo asked. Yuna sat across from him. "I remember. You thought your claws would frighten me." "Nothing frightened you. Many things frightened me," Yuna admitted. "I was terrified when I walked into that room for the first time. I was terrified that my research was wrong, that I would die and leave you alone again. I was terrified of failing you. You never showed it. A mother cannot show fear in front of her children. It is our job to be brave, even when we are not." Tejo looked at her across the table. His golden eyes, once so full of pain, were now warm with love. "Thank you," he said, "for everything. For being brave. For entering that room. For giving me a kiss when I needed it most." Yuna reached across the table and took his clawed hand in hers. "Thank you for letting me love you," she said. "Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for becoming the amazing person you are today." They sat in comfortable silence, holding hands across the breakfast table, watching the sun rise higher over the mountains. Later that day, Tejo stood before the Galactic Council. Ambassadors from 100 worlds watched as he presented his proposal for expanded adoption programs. He spoke clearly and confidently, his voice carrying through the great hall. 10 years ago," he said, "I was a child who had never been touched with kindness. I believed I was a monster. I believed I was unworthy of love. Then a human woman walked through a door that everyone said should remain closed. She held me. She kissed my forehead. She told me I was worthy." He paused, looking out at the assembled beings. "That single act of courage changed my life. It changed the lives of 47 orphans. It changed the relationship between two species forever. All because one person chose love over fear. He took a breath. We stand at another door now. There are more children waiting. More orphans across the galaxy who need homes. Not just plague dragons, there are others. Species who carry diseases, who look frightening, who have been pushed to the edges of society. They are all waiting for someone brave enough to reach out. He looked directly at the cameras that were broadcasting his speech across the galaxy. Humans have shown us what is possible. They have proven that fear is not stronger than love. Now, I ask you, who else will be brave? Who else will open their doors? Who else will give a child a gentle touch? A kind word. A kiss on the forehead. A kind word. The hall was silent. Then, slowly, the applause began. It started small and grew into a wave of sound that filled the chamber. That evening, Tejo returned home. Yuna was waiting for him on the porch, watching the stars appear in the darkening sky. "How did it go?" she asked. Tejo sat beside her. "Good, I think. They approved the proposal." "Of course they did. You were wonderful." They sat together in the quiet evening. Mother and son, human and plague dragon. The stars above were the same stars that had looked down on Station Orvac. Cold and distant. But they did not seem cold anymore. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you had not come?" Tejo asked. Yuna was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes. But I try not to. I prefer to think about what did happen. I would have died on that station. Not physically, maybe, but inside. I was already dying when you arrived." "I know," Yuna said softly. "I could see it in your eyes. You saved me." Yuna turned to look at him. Her eyes were filled with tears, but she was smiling. "No, my son. We saved each other." She reached up and kissed his forehead, just as she had done 10 years ago. Just as she did every night before he went to sleep. Just as she would do for the rest of her life. Tejo closed his eyes and let the warmth of her love wash over him. He thought about all the children across the galaxy who were being held for the first time tonight. He thought about all the doors being opened. All the fear being conquered. All the love being given. The universe was still vast and cold and sometimes cruel. But it was also filled with people like Yuna. People who chose kindness. People who reached out when others turned away. People who proved that the smallest acts of love could change everything. The plague dragon orphans had once been the most feared beings in the galaxy. Now they were proof that fear could be overcome. And it had all started with one human doctor and a gentle kiss.